This week on The Watchman, two miraculous stories of Israeli resilience. First, her friend was murdered before her eyes while she was brutally stabbed and left for dead. Now she shares her stunning story of survival.
I can hear my bones crunch, and it's over and over and over again. And I just say, God, please help me. Let me live. Give me one more chance.
Plus, a Hezbollah sniper nearly ended his life. Instead, this Israeli soldier began a new path that led him closer to God and an unlikely new passion. It's Israeli resilience, this week on The Watchman, only with Christians United for Israel and only on TBN. And welcome to The Watchman. Some in the mainstream media have called them peaceful protests. Now, if you call Molotov cocktails, AK-47s, stone throwing, and explosives peaceful, then I guess they have a point. I'm talking about the violent riots, not peaceful protests, that the terror group Hamas has led along the Gaza border these past few months. At the direction of Hamas, thousands of Palestinians have attempted to storm into Israeli territory from Gaza and attack Israeli soldiers and communities. In the process, they've used some sinister new tactics. Hamas has sent a daily barrage of flaming kites and balloons. Yes, kites and balloons into southern Israel. Some of them are even equipped with tiny explosive devices, and they've done great damage. Thousands of acres of Israeli land have been burned as a result of these airborne arson attacks. Now, first it was suicide bombings, then it was terror tunnels, and now we have mass riots and terror kites. And all the while, the Hamas rocket barrages out of Gaza have continued for years. Yet through it all, Israel perseveres. It not only survives, it thrives, blessing the world with incredible innovation, cutting-edge technology, and humanitarian work. Psalm 46 says that God Almighty is Israel's refuge and strength, a very present help in times of trouble. You know, I think of that verse and the amazing perseverance of the Jewish people when I think of Kaye Wilson. Kaye is an Israeli tour guide who was brutally attacked by Palestinian terrorists in 2011 simply because she was Jewish. Her friend was killed in the attack, and Kaye was left for dead, but she survived. And now she's able to share her harrowing and inspiring story with the world. It's one that will stay with you long after you've heard it. Take a look.
I was training to become a guide, a historical guide of the Holocaust in World War II Polish Germany sites. And I took a trip to Poland in 2010 as the secondary guide, and Christine was one of the group. And she was so enthusiastic with everything Jewish, our history, our people, our books, and of course the Holocaust. And I wanted to show her like the real Israel, you know, take her to a wine bar, help her eat hummus, meet all the great people. So I invited her over for a long weekend, and she came over. She arrived late on the Friday, and on the Shabbat, the Sabbath, I'd planned every day according to the geographical regions, so I wanted to take her to the lowlands and all the history and end up in the Judean mountains. So we end up in the afternoon going on a hike. We both love hiking on the Israel National Trail. It's 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and we're sitting on a rock. Most beautiful, beautiful place. Like, you know, Israel is sometimes a very dry and unforgiving land, and to have greenery like you have all around here, it's remarkable. And from that rock, I see, crouched in the bushes 60 feet away, I can see 2 men. And as we've spoken, I've been here 3 decades, and I have Arab friends, I have Palestinian friends, and I can see they're Palestinians. They stand up and they ask for water in Hebrew. I answer back in Hebrew that I wish, and they go away. And I'm feeling very uneasy. Maybe they saw my backpack, then they're going to steal it. So I tell Christine we should get back to the car. We pounce up, start walking back very rapidly through the thicket. I take out my penknife just in case they're going to grab a bag. She's behind me, I hear her scream, I turn around, and then it feels like somebody's ramming a log in my back, and I fall to the ground. And one of the guys has got his hand on my head and he's like rubbing my face in the dirt. I managed to turn over. I managed to stab him in the thigh, lightly. He's bigger than me, he takes the penknife, hoists me to my feet. I look around. The other one has got Christine like this with a butcher's knife to her throat. And the one who attacked me, he takes out this machete, a foot long, with a serrated blade. And then begins half an hour standing in the most peaceful, tranquil place where the birds are singing and the crickets are chirping, and I can smell the pines. And we're held at knife point for half an hour. And in the beginning, having forgotten in the shock that I spoke to them in Hebrew about the water, I'm trying to pretend we're both tourists, we're both Christians. But he finds my ID, it said Israeli, it said Jewish, and then the game changed. And I'm conversing with them in Hebrew. I'm saying I'm a tour guide. I said they should take my car, everything, nothing working. And one of them begins to make phone calls, and he's speaking in Arabic, and I know some Arabic, and I can hear he's coordinating with a car. And I suspected at that point a kidnapping. He finishes speaking, he comes over and he says in Hebrew, Toridi na'alaim. So I take off my shoes. Totsi srochim. So I take out the laces and they tie our hands behind our back. The other guy takes Christine's fleece from around her waist, hacks it up, gags us. One takes off my glasses and then he takes off my Star of David. Then he says in Arabic, Shu hadeh, what's this? And I answer back in Hebrew, it's the Magen David, it's a Star of David. And so we're standing gag bound barefoot, and I'm waiting to be pushed off through the forest into a road and then to Gaza, but instead of that, one stands between us. One of the guys pushes me on my knees, shoves my head forward. Forest rings out with this cosmic symphony. They scream, Allahu Akbar. You know, Allah is great. Christine, I don't know how to describe it really, but behind her gag she said, Jesus help me. And I say, Shema Israel, you know, Hear O Israel. And he stabs me in the back so hard I fall to the ground. Now I'm leaning on my side and he's beating me with the machete. He's stabbing it in so hard it gets stuck in bone. And I can hear my bones crunch, and it's over and over and over again. And I just say, God, please help me, let me live, give me one more chance. And I knew people die with their eyes open, so I kept my eyes open. And in doing so, I made a very difficult moral choice, because 5 feet away, 2 meters away, I watch Christine hacked to death before my eyes. They leave and they come back seconds later, and one turns me on my back. And now I'm looking up at these pine trees and this amazing sunset, and it's suddenly obscured by the silhouette of a hand, a man's hand that God made. And it's holding a knife, and I watch him stab me in the chest, miss my heart by 4 millimeters. They believe we're dead, or I'm dead too, and they leave, and I have one last goal in life, and that's to die nearer where I parked the car so the police could find my body. And I managed to stand, and I turn my back on what's left of my friend, and step by step I begin to walk uphill through the thicket with the thorns, and I can hear my lungs gurgling and bones are sticking out of me. And I was thinking crazily about the song Somewhere Over the Rainbow, which was written by 2 Jews on the eve of World War II. And by thinking about that music, which also speaks about Jewish hope for a better world, I managed to walk over a mile, and there's a family at the picnic table who called the police and the army and the ambulance. I did have like 6 snap ribs, 30 broken bones, bones splintered into my lungs, 13 machete wounds, a dislocated shoulder, a crushed sternum, broken shoulder blade. I was very, very critically injured. Christine's body was found the next morning. Okay, there was a press blackout, and 6 weeks later, the story comes out because I managed to stab the guy, the DNA on my knife, helped the police capture the murderers, and they confessed to murdering another woman, and a terror cell was caught. 9 months after the murder, I found myself in court with them. There was no forensic doubt because of the blood on my knife. They were smug, you know, when the judge said, why did you murder an American Christian? And they shrugged their shoulders and they rolled their eyes and they said, oh, we thought she was Jewish. My vengeance is twofold. One, it's to live life well, to be thankful for everything I have. And to deal with the rage and the loss, I decided that I'm going to direct my energy through legal channels and do everything I can to stop the funding of Palestinian terrorism, because these people actually get a monthly salary from the Palestinian Authority, shockingly so. And I'm going to do everything I can to make sure they're never released from jail. And whenever I can, like in this program now, I will speak well of my friend and I'll speak of the goodness of Israel. But I also have to bear witness to what evil does.
Thanks again to Kaye Wilson for sharing her powerful story. Folks, Kaye is one courageous and bold person, and it was a blessing to spend time with her. Be sure to check Kaye out on Twitter. You see her handle there on your screen. She tells it like it is. Well, coming up after the break, another story of amazing Israeli perseverance. Meet the IDF soldier who was nearly killed by Hezbollah, but instead found God and an unlikely new passion. Folks, this is one you don't want to miss. Stick around.
Israel's amazing story of restoration, blessing, and divine protection during the last 70 years is proof that God's covenant with the Jewish people and the land of Israel is unbreakable. In 1948, God fulfilled His promise to restore the land of Israel to the Jewish people. For 70 years, Israel has shocked the world as it has survived endless wars and terror attacks and yet remained hopeful, successful, and compassionate. This year, please join CUFI in celebrating Israel at 70 and supporting the one and only Jewish state. Christians United for Israel created this Israel at 70 pin to honor the Jewish state's 7 decades of miraculous modern rebirth. Thank you for enabling CUFI to amplify your voice. Call Christians United for Israel at 210-477-4714 or go to cufi.org/watchman to receive your free Israel at 70 pin.
And welcome back. He took a bullet to the head and survived. Ger Nedzvetsky came out of Israel's 2006 war against Hezbollah with serious injuries that still have an effect on him today. But you wouldn't know it by talking to him. Ger used that fateful day in 2006 as motivation to become a champion martial artist. And in the meantime, he drew closer to the God of Israel. Here's his unlikely and inspiring story.
My name is Ger Nedzvetsky. I've served in the paratroopers from 2003 to 2006. The real reason that I joined the paratroopers was actually because I really wanted to jump from an airplane. That's the main reason, really. I was accepted to a reconnaissance battalion, a small unit which has several specializations. We passed a course, a training course, which was very long. It lasted for about 1.5 years for me. I was a medic and also a sharpshooter and also several various other things. And only then we actually were sent into combat. At that time in Israel there were numerous terrorist acts. It was on a weekly basis, sometimes on a daily basis. We were going to missions every night, sometimes more than once a night. I have to be concentrated all the time. You never know what will happen. In the middle of 2006, there was a very serious event in the northern borders of Israel. Ehud Goldwasser and Eldad Regev were kidnapped, and the other members of their squad, they were killed. The situation escalated very quickly. Something has to be done about Hezbollah. We were called off from our regular missions. We trained for about 3 days. The operation that we were trained to do, quietly sneak 5 or 6 kilometers north into Lebanon, then to turn around and attack a small Hezbollah compound, which was located in a village called Aita Ashab. 12 of us entered Lebanon. There was a lot of tension in the air because we knew that the army is yet to go there. We will be completely alone. No one to rely on except each other and God. At first we passed the border, walking slowly and carefully to our target. One of my specialties, I was the main pathfinder and the navigator of my team. That means that I was always leading. If something is going to happen, I will be the first to take it. But then again, we were relatively calm. Every 10 or 15 seconds, everyone stopped, keeping silent for a few minutes to hear if there are any unusual noises around us. We left the main team, 8 people, behind, and we drew out our special rockets that we used. These rockets were designed to penetrate through a wall. If there's anything explodable inside, to create a reaction there. If there are rockets there or explosions or anything that can explode, it will blow up the entire house. I was on the far left. I was about 10-15 meters from the next person. We had a countdown in the radio, and simultaneously we fired 3 rockets. At least 2 were, there was a massive explosion inside, and the intelligence that we had was, I guess, correct. And then I suddenly saw 2 silhouettes coming from my left. They were very, very close to me. But I wasn't sure if they are armed or not armed and who they are. We were very used to the rules of engagement we had in the Western Bank. You're not allowed to shoot anyone unless you know for sure that he's armed and he poses a threat. I saw these 2 silhouettes on my left, and I started to raise my rifle. They just shot through the bushes. The first bullet entered my mouth, passed about 3 millimeters from my brain, exited just beneath my ear, just went through. The second bullet hit my vest, and the third bullet came in and out of my left leg. I flew back. I felt as if the reality, what I see, comes closer to me.
Up next, the sniper's bullet that would change Gur Nedvetsky's life forever, but not in the way you might think. It's The Watchman. It's Christians United for Israel, only right here on TBN. Don't move.
With over 3.5 million members, Christians United for Israel is the largest pro-Israel organization in America. And for Zion's sake, we will not remain silent. We won't stand for the lies and political attacks that threaten Israel's safety and the future of the Jewish people in their God-given homeland. We want you to join us in this sacred movement.
The Jewish people are not alone. Christians United for Israel, I want to thank you for standing up for Israel. I want to thank you for standing up and being counted. May God bless you all. Thank you.
Israel needs you to take a stand. Join Christians United for Israel. Make your voice heard and be remembered as a defender of Israel, the apple of God's eye.
I see a sort of tunnel. I was very drawn to it. I kept going into it, and then suddenly, ta-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta. Hey, it's my friend with the machine gun. I'm in Lebanon, there is a fight. I don't want to get captured. I need to do something about it. Everything came back, and also the fear and the pain. Yeah, my team returned fire at the fire sources. I turned on my belly, and I started to crawl towards my teammates, eating the land of Lebanon with my second mouth. And you know, just like in the training, you give first aid, you put the wounded on a stretcher, whatever you need to do until you get to the safe zone. The entire village woke up. They just shot blindly into the entire area. It was very clear that I will not survive unless I will be immediately evacuated to a hospital. The moment the helicopter showed up in the sky, immediately all the fire was turned to this helicopter. A missile goes above him, another missile goes beneath him. He continues to descend until to really reach the top of the bushes. Cutting them with the back rotor. The chopper can't get down and they can't pick me up. So my teammates took the chance and just took the stretcher with me on it, and they just threw it in the air. Some things I still don't remember. The main damage was done by the bullet that went through my jaw. Also, it cut the nerves that control the left side of my face. I had them later implanted. These physical traumas are something that I'm just going to have to live with them for the rest of my life. I'm completely okay with it because I really believe in what I did in the army and in Lebanon specifically. My body was a mess. I had difficulties with coordination. There is a martial art called Iaido, very simple movements, nothing too difficult, too hard. I went there a couple of times and I felt really good with it. Naginata is the name for the Japanese halberd. It's usually about 2 meters long. It was considered the main battle weapon in the 13th and 14th century. The Naginata became more sportive, competitive, and people are able to practice it starting from an early age. When you're having something so long, every movement becomes very difficult and very clumsy, unless you're really good at what you're doing. Today I'm actually leading and coordinating all the trainings of Naginata in Israel. I also represent Israel on international events. For the first time, Israel took place in competing in All European Open tournament. The first time Israel participated and we took first place.
Who took this first place?
I did. Yeah, it is unbelievable actually, but when you really want something to happen, it just happens. And I had a lot of help. I have to mention my wife. She gives me a lot of motivation, and she helps me in difficult times. And without her, it would not be possible. I feel that I'm a part of something much bigger. I have a job to do here, and this job is to study the Torah and to try to fulfill it. So the reason that I had so much success in Naginata, even though I was injured and despite all the difficulties, is because where there's a will, there's a way. I mean, if you're really motivated, you can achieve practically everything. And I feel that I'm still in the very beginning of the way. I have a lot more to achieve.
Wow. Thanks again to Ger Nedzvetsky for sharing his incredible story. Folks, only God could take Ger's circumstances and turn them into something wonderful. Well, coming up after the break, my final thoughts on the amazing Israeli perseverance and how it's blessing the world. It's the Watchman. It's Christians United for Israel, only right here on TBN. Stick around. If you love experiencing Israel through the Watchman, I want to invite you to experience it with me in person on November 5th through the 15th. I'll be here in Israel with Pastor John Hagee, founder of Christians United for Israel, and together we will introduce you to the incredible people and places you've seen right here on the show every week. Folks, you don't want to miss this incredible opportunity to see and experience Bible history and the prophetic miracle of modern Israel firsthand. This year is the 70th anniversary of Israel's rebirth as a nation, and I want you to join our Kufi team here as we celebrate this amazing milestone in God's plan. I'll be here to share with you some of my favorite places and stories in the land where Jesus walked. Visit the Kufi website at the link below or call the number on your screen to join me and Pastor John Hagee here in Israel this November. And welcome back to The Watchman. We are wrapping up this episode featuring some amazing stories of Israeli perseverance. And when I think of that Israeli perseverance, I think of the Israel Defense Forces, the defenders of Israel. Take a look at this clip that our team at Christians United for Israel put together about the Israel Defense Forces.
No other military in the world receives as much criticism as the Israel Defense Forces. After every IDF action, we hear global outcries and calls for investigations and accusations of war crimes. But what is the truth? The truth is that military experts from around the world have studied the conduct and rules of warfare followed by the Israel Defense Forces and found that the accusations were lies. Israel trains its soldiers to place a premium value on human life and exceeds every internationally accepted military standard in its attempts to protect innocent civilians. Israel's high moral standard for its military comes from a culture that celebrates and values life. While Hamas and Hezbollah store and fire weapons from civilian areas, intentionally placing civilians in danger, the IDF often chooses to put its own soldiers at greater risk in order to avoid civilian casualties. The truth is that no other military in the world holds itself to a higher moral standard than the IDF.
The Bible says that the God of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps when it comes to the defense of his people. And our team at Christians United for Israel realizes that very well. We are America's largest pro-Israel organization, some 4.2 million members, growing every day, and we want you to join our movement. You see the information there on your screen. Come and join us for such a time as this and for Zion's sake. Well, thanks for joining us this week on The Watchman. Until next time, God bless you. And remember, never hold your peace.